Okay, so we are set to begin at 7 o'clock, so let's go ahead and get rolling. My name is Don Kortz, Academic Dean here at Rockford Lutheran. Thanks for joining me tonight. And for all of those of you who were on Zoom, let me mention first before we get going too far that I am recording the presentation tonight. And so in the next few days, you'll be able to find the Zoom recording as well as the PowerPoint posted under Counselor's Corner. So you won't have to worry about scrambling to take notes as you're going through things. There are a lot of links in the site and that sort of thing too, or in the presentation, so you'll be able to grab all that from the recording and from Counselor's Corner later on. So let's start with a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity we have to gather here to just focus on the future for these young people. Lord, bless us as we seek to join you in lighting the path that you prepared for them to take. Bless us as we seek answers to so many questions and so many unknowns, and open our eyes to that light that you prepared and that path that you prepared and this purpose and destiny that you have for these young people. Help them to see the gifts that you've imparted to them, and help them to understand the opportunities that they have to use those gifts to make a difference in the lives of people and in your world today. Bless us, God, on that journey. In your name, amen. Okay, so we start here just taking a look at the school's mission statement, because hopefully the things that we're talking about tonight are going to be a pretty clear message and opportunity for you to see how this is lived out and what we're going to be doing and what we're going to be facing as we take a look at the next few years. And we talk about our core values as Christ-centered excellence, service, and harmony. Those are things that we really are seeking to instill in the lives of your kids and in all of our lives as we design our program here, and as we try to live that out in a faithful fashion. And hopefully you'll be able to see that as we go through what we're talking about tonight. We're going to spend a fair amount of time talking about college and what that's about, and it's helpful to kind of get a picture of, part of what this is really an opportunity for us to view an investment. Obviously, there's more to your student than just getting him to college, but there's a whole lot more to the experience that exists here and what their future looks like than just college as well. I mean, obviously, there are career opportunities and there's great opportunities in terms of employment and salary and that sort of thing, the more education you get. But again, we like to take a look at it from the standpoint of we're investing in the life of this young person, not just in their economic future, but in their character and their skills, their talents, their gifts, and therefore by doing that, we're really investing in our future and their future as well. So that just gives you a bit of a point to start at. I like to start by encouraging parents to think about some questions here. As it relates to, what are some of the biggest fears that parents have? And you can certainly feel free to answer the questions here if you like to, or I'm not going to be able to watch the screen and hear in the building and the chat at the same time, unfortunately, but feel free to, as parents, just talk with your kids a little bit about what some of the most significant fears are that relate to the whole college process, and what sort of counseling did you as parents get in high school and so on, and think about what's resources you're familiar with, or maybe what sort of resources you wish you could find that would be a part of this process. And hopefully, as we work through tonight, those will be some questions that you'll be able to answer differently as a part of what we experience. But if you have some things like that, encourage you to talk with your kids about that, because it's easy for kids to think, the anxieties that they face in this situation, like they're the only one that's in that boat. And when they can understand that we as parents dealt with these sorts of things too, that gives them a little bit of sense of connection with us and understanding that helps them see themselves a little bit differently. And okay, I'm not so out of whack, or I'm not so abnormal for thinking this or being worried about this and that sort of thing, because mom and dad went through it too, that sort of thing. And students, there's some questions here I'm going to throw out, and a lot of these are things that we haven't talked a whole lot about yet, but I'll tell you just so you as parents know too. I spent today with sophomores. We met during their religion class, talked about the whole rec sheet process with them fairly extensively today, and taking a look at what some future college needs are and what the timing is of things coming up in college. And there's a lot more we're going to talk about. I'll be visiting sophomores again a couple of times this year because I really think that the sophomore year is a key year in the whole college preparation process. And some people think that, you know, it's too early for people to think about it and they're not ready for it or whatever. But, you know, one of the things that I started talking with the sophomores about today when we started is the fact that they need to come August of their senior year ready to apply to college. August of their senior year, the college search process is over, which means they've only got a year and a half. And that process not only begins and is carried out, but is also done. Because applications need to go in October, November of senior year. Because that's when a lot of schools starting having deadlines. And that's when scholarship funds are made available. And so, you know, some of those funds are gone by Thanksgiving or Christmas, or some of those seats are filled before Christmas, that sort of thing. And so in order for our kids to have all the opportunities we want them to have, we need to be ready to make that application by the time they're coming back to school in August of their senior year. Well, that means they've got a year and a half to carry that whole process out. And so, yeah, there's a lot to do. There's a lot to think about. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot to plan for. So this is what I'm going to be spending some time yet over the course of the rest of this year talking with sophomores about. And a lot of that has to do with, okay, let's see what's on my transcript and how does that look? Am I okay with that? Because our transcript that we're going to use to apply to college is now half done. Because there's only 6 semesters that go on that transcript when we're applying to college in August of our senior year, because we've only finished our junior year so far. So that means the 3 semesters that we've completed make up half of what that college is going to see. What's this other half going to look like? What do we want to do different than we did the first half? And what do we want to maybe fix in those first 3 semesters in terms of what we do with these next 3 semesters and so on? Those are the things to be thinking about, but we need to start by having that time frame in mind that, oh yeah, there's a lot to do and we've got a year and a half to do it. So just a little bit of context there. But generally, you know, these are good questions for you as students to be thinking about as well. So let's start with understanding really what colleges want, what they're looking for. We talked about GPA. We talked about some of this before. Here's information for you in terms of how our grading scale works, how the honors classes work. I talked with sophomores quite a bit about this today, recognizing the significance of GPA and what it says to kids. And we started working from the perspective of realizing that colleges are looking for graduates. And when I say that, they're not looking for high school graduates. They're looking for college graduates. They're looking to bring in people who are freshmen who they are pretty certain are going to leave 4 years later as graduates. Because one of the biggest ways that colleges are scored, ranked, rated, however you want to call it, is how many freshmen come in at the front door and how many leave 4 years later with the diploma and how many drop off in between. And so it's really to the college's benefit to make sure that they're recruiting and accepting students that are going to have a good chance of being there all 4 years. Because if their dropout rate is too high, that's a major black mark on that college's ranking. Okay, so they're going to be looking for kids that have good GPAs. They're going to be looking for kids that have, you know, experienced some success here, and they're also going to be looking for kids to make sure that they've got good courses on that transcript too. It's not just getting a good GPA, but you got to get a good GPA in classes that count. So here's our requirements that we have, just in a nutshell. You got 4 years of religion and English, 3 years of social studies, 3 years of math, 3 years of science, a year of fine arts, 2 years of foreign language at the high school level, 2 years of PE and health, and then 4 credits of flex. So a lot of colleges do want 4 years of math nowadays. Many of them are still fine with the 3 years of science, which is typically they want to see a biology, a chemistry, and a physics. But a lot more of them are going to want 4 years of math. So, but we've got some kids that need a little bit more flexibility because of what they want to do in terms of things like engineering or fine arts or something like that. So we kind of created this flex category, which is similar to what would be considered STEAM in a lot of settings where, okay, so you pick up some extra science, some technology, engineering kind of classes, some fine arts or some math and that sort of thing, or dual credit classes. And that's how you fill out your core requirements along with 4 credits of electives. So there's your 52. Those are the classes that we feel are really going to get you in a good position to be successful at the college level. Okay, But the classes that we take are going to be key in terms of what that transcript's going to really look like as somebody really analyzes it. The classes you take are also going to be critical to you as you take a look at college level testing. You want to make sure you're taking the courses that are going to help support a good ACT, SAT score. And that means, getting into as many honors classes as you can, AP classes, dual credit classes, that sort of thing. One of the things that we talk about too is the fact that those courses have a positive impact on GPA, because as you saw there, an A is worth 5 points and B is worth 4 points, et cetera. So that's a bit of a bump there. The idea is that's just an encouragement to have kids take these classes. Now, one of the things we talked about today is, okay, so recognize that if you're in a regular English class now, in order to get into honors English class next year, you need to have A's in both semesters. If you're in an honors English class now, you need to have A's or B's in both semesters to stay in the honors class. So one of the questions that as parents you ought to be asking your kids, okay, so if you're in regular English this year and you just pulled a B for a semester, is that really the best you could do? Or if you would have spent a little bit more time prepping for those vocab quizzes, if you would have spent a little bit more time redoing a couple of those essays, you would have spent a little more time reading that story and prepping for the test and that kind of thing, could you have pulled an A if you really worked at it? Okay. Well, that's a really serious thing to be thinking about, because being an honors level English class at the junior year is a pretty big deal. It's going to be helpful to your GPA. It's going to be helpful to you in terms of college testing prep. It's also going to be helpful to you in terms of getting into senior honors English, which is one of those dual credit classes. So our seniors this year have already finished their first college class, a course in composition. And now they're doing a course in literature. So they're going to graduate as seniors from Rockford Lutheran, having already completed their high school English requirements and their college English requirements as well. And so that's going to put them in a great position for a number of reasons. First of all, it's going to be good for their GPA. Second of all, it's going to save them about 300 hours worth of college level homework. It's going to save parents thousands of dollars of college tuition, because the dual credit classes are really inexpensive. It's going to also demonstrate to those colleges that they apply to that, yeah, this is a student that's really got a good chance for success at the college level because they've already taken college level classes. So those are all things that we really consider helpful in the dual credit process. We've got about 10 dual credit classes we're offering this year, everything from Spanish to government and econ and psychology, a couple of English, biology, anatomy, physiology, chemistry, those sorts of things. So that's something we really want to encourage kids, especially now. And this is something for you to be talking with your students about as you're taking a look at that rec sheet that they should have brought home tonight, because we passed it all out to them. Yeah, they should have gotten that today. They got that home to you. So you really want to be taking a look at what kind of classes, you're selecting from there, because this is the first year that you really have some flexibility in terms of what you take.
So can he start taking the dual credit? When did he start the dual credit classes? Next year?
Good question. Yeah, dual credit classes are available primarily senior year, but there are some that are available next year. If you're in the upper level Spanish, you can do like a Spanish 4 can be a dual credit class for you next year, or Spanish 5 or Spanish 6. Psychology can be a dual credit class that a junior can take next year. Otherwise, it depends on what level of science they're in, that sort of thing. Some students are going to be taking like a Bio 2 next year, and they can get dual credit for that. More classes available senior year, because you got your 2 senior English classes, you got your 2 senior social studies classes, along with the science classes and the foreign language and so on. So yeah, but you can start that as a junior, and I certainly encourage you to do that, because that's going to be something that really sends a message to colleges that, okay, this student's obviously college material because they've already concluded a number of classes. Not unusual for us to have a lot of kids that finish their first semester of college before they leave high school. And in some cases, we've had students that have completed their first year of college before they left high school. That's not easy, but it's doable. But at this point, as freshmen and sophomores, most of your classes were kind of laid out for you. You had to take your basic required, your English, your math, your science, your religion, your fine art or your social studies, your world language, and your PE. And that was pretty much it. Well, PE drops off after sophomore year. You can take it as an elective, but you don't have to. So that opens up a period you can do something else. I encourage kids to continue on with the world language, because it's major opportunity in terms of jobs down the road to have a minor in a foreign language on top of your business degree or accounting degree or teaching degree or whatever. It's a huge advantage in that regard. So I encourage kids to take the foreign language, but if they choose not to do that, I also say, okay, but that was a heavy duty class that you decided not to take. make sure you replace it with an equally heavy-duty class in terms of how that'll look on your transcript. So you do start to have some options now in terms of what some of those 6th and 7th classes should be. So, and I also mentioned, now's the time when, as you're starting to think about what sort of things might I be interested in doing career-wise. Am I interested in something like journalism, desktop publishing, those sorts of things? Well, okay, something like yearbook might be something good for you to try out, because you try it out and okay, that didn't cost you a whole lot. You wait till you go to college thinking that's what you want to major in, and you try it out, and then you find out you don't like it so well. Okay, that probably just cost you $30,000, $40,000. So that's a really expensive decision at that point. But that's why we've got accounting and entrepreneurship. If you're interested in something relative to business or accounting and those sorts of things, the psych soc are available for people that are interested in that side of the study of people and traits and habits and those sorts of things. We've got a full 3-year engineering program for kids that are interested in going that sort of a direction. Got a very extensive science program for kids that are interested in going to medical kind of a direction, that sort of thing. So this is a great time to start checking out some of those other options to kind of either confirm, yeah, this is something I really do like, or to find out that, oh, okay, yeah, I thought that was going to be fun, but yeah, I don't think that's really something I want to do anymore. So this is a great time to do that. Keep that in mind as you're taking a look at those rec sheets. Hopefully, talking about that maybe tonight and tomorrow into this weekend, that sort of thing. Certainly get in touch with me if you have questions about some of those sorts of things, but talk about that as it relates to what you want your transcript to look like. Okay, obviously schools are interested in ACT scores. And again, ACT is going to tell you, if you want to improve your ACT score, 2 things. You take hard classes and you do your homework. There's no secrets and no shortcuts, no surprises. You just take hard classes and you do your homework. That's how you get there. So this gives you a little bit of an idea about what typical scores are and so on. Recognize too that, and this is one of the things we talked about with students today as well, is that your GPA and your ACT scores are not only going to dictate a lot of things about where you get to go to school and what degrees you get to pursue, they're also going to have a lot to do with how much you pay for college. Because while we hear so much in the news about athletic scholarships and that sort of thing, and they certainly are a great thing to pursue, nothing wrong with that, but there's a lot more money in the grades than there is in athletics. So that's what you really want to be thinking about as you're looking at things like ACT scores. We'll talk about some prep for that and that sort of thing tonight as we keep going. So just some basic study things for you as students to keep in mind as you're looking at what's down the road, and for you as parents to kind of help them stay on top of at this point. If we're going to be serious about taking dual credit classes and high-end classes and honors classes that are going to help our GPA, and that means we got to get good grades and that sort of thing, there's some basic things here that you need to just kind of keep in mind as you really, as a student, really own that decision for your future. And that's really what we're talking about. This is your opportunity to make a difference in terms of what your college options are. And so you need to own that opportunity by really stepping up and being willing to get involved in some of these good habits that are going to get you where you want to end up. Colleges are also really interested in what you do outside of the classroom. And so this is something that I hope that as you've gone through the previous years of junior high and high school, that it's going to be a little bit sketchy this year, and end of last year was a little bit weak because of the whole COVID thing. But the opportunities that you take to involve yourself in things outside of the outside of high school and outside of the classroom also send colleges a really important message. Because again, those schools are looking for kids who are going to come there and stay for 4 years. Obviously, being academically prepared is a huge part of that, because if they can't handle the work, they're not going to be able to stay. But the other part of that is, are they students that are going to really fit in? Are they going to come there and really embrace the campus? Are really going to be engaging in that culture of that school? Because they know that those are the kids that really come there and belong. They don't just come and take classes. They don't just come and go to class and go to the dining hall and go to the dorm room, and next day get up and go to the class, go to the dining hall, go to the dorm room. They are really part of the campus community, really part of that culture. The key there is they have statistics that'll show those kids that really get engaged like that are the kids that are going to stay, because they fit in, they feel comfortable. This becomes their home. This becomes their friend group and all those sorts of things. So that's really a key. Now, as a college admissions officer, how do you get an idea what sort of kids are more likely to get engaged in your campus community and therefore stay and feel comfortable and fit in? Well, it's going to be kids that did that in high school. It's going to be kids that joined teams. It's going to be kids that were involved in clubs. It's going to be kids that were involved in extracurriculars involving drama and music and that sort of thing. It's going to be kids that took leadership roles and really got involved not only in going to prom, but helping to, to set up the previous year's prom and all those sorts of things. So that's a big thing of the part of the college search process in terms of preparing a resume of your own, really, that's going to enable you to really put out there, this is the kind of stuff that I do outside of school, outside the classroom, in the community, and so on, because that's a big part of sending a message to those universities that, yeah, I'm gonna come, but I'm going to get involved. I'm going to be a part of this campus community. That's something they're really taking seriously. Okay, so there's a lot for us to talk about in terms of what our planning needs to look like from here, and here's some tools that we're going to provide for you in terms of beginning to look at that and so on. And that planning, like we've been talking about, needs to start now because we've only got 3 semesters left to kind of prepare that transcript that's going to go to the colleges. So we're going to talk about some ways in which you can start thinking about career choices and start thinking about career options and what sort of things are going to help you develop some goals that are going to get you where you want to go. And one of the things I like to talk about here is one of the things to recognize is that our students developmentally are just getting to the point where they're really getting an understanding of themselves. And in context of the college search process, that's really huge because they need to understand who is it that God created them to be? What are the gifts that are really unique to them? What are the passions that they have that are going to be an integral part of their future career? What are the interests that they have that they want to pursue that are going to be something that really energizes them and turns this into a career and a calling as opposed to just a job? Those are things that are really important, because one of the things I'll talk to kids about, especially as they get to be juniors and they're kind of finalizing some of these decisions, is, you know what, if you find that place where your gifts and passions intersect with a need in this world, you're going to find a place where you will never work a day in your life, because it won't be work. You're going to love what you do. That's what we want to seek. And so part of the challenge that we deal with here is that, okay, but these are still sophomores in high school. We're talking 15 years old. Are they really at the point where they know themselves well enough to know what they have a passion for, to know what all their gifts really are, and to know what all their interests really are? Well, probably not. And it's not their fault. There's anything wrong with them. But 5 years ago, they wouldn't have been able to answer any of those questions at all in terms of, okay, so what do you feel you're really gifted at? They'd kind of look at you as a 10-year-old with a blank stare, and to them, gift is something that comes at Christmas time, and that's about the extent of their understanding of that. Now they're getting to the point where that's a little bit deeper discussion that they can have and a deeper understanding they can have of themselves. But we as parents really need to help them out with that, because the reality is you probably know your student better than they know themselves, because you've had the maturity to watch all this stuff happen to them for the last 15 years. And you're going to see things in them that they're not going to see in themselves. One of the things I had 4 kids, and I have a younger brother who's still a bachelor, so no kids. And one of the first things he bought for our oldest kid was this huge bucket of like 150 little play toy cars. Okay, well, he obviously wasn't thinking about who's going to do all the picking up of those 150 cars X number of times, when they get done playing with it, because the biggest fun that they had was taking the bucket and dumping it over and just watching all the cars go all over the floor, right? Okay, well, then somebody got us one of those rugs that has like roads and houses and all that kind of stuff on it that you can use to play with little toy cars. Okay, so they did spend a lot of time playing with it. I gotta admit, it was a good call. They really enjoyed it, a lot of creativity, all that sort of thing. But what was interesting is we as parents could watch our kids play with those cars on that rug, and they all played with the same cars, all on the same rug. They were fairly close together, so the cars survived, all 4 kids. But it was interesting because one of them would really engage with what was going on with the cars and sounds that they make, and talking to people, and beep beeps, and hearing things as they drove along, and that sort of thing. And so the sound stuff was kind of interesting to them. Everything that they saw as a little kid, they would ask about. They would ask, what does that say? You know, what does that animal say? What he says was his famous term. Another one of our kids would take the cars and line them up by color, and get done with that, and then line them up by size and organize them. Another one of the kids would forget the rug. I'm going to build a racetrack because I want to see which car is going to go the farthest, or I want to see which car is going to go the fastest. And it was all about speed and distance and just figuring out how I could do something to make the cars do what I want them to do. And then another one used the cars to go around and communicate and kind of create a community of people that lived in those little houses on the rug. Okay? Every one of them played very differently with those cars. It was really interesting to watch. Okay? So the one that was all about the sounds that the kids make is now got a career in music. The one that was all about organizing the cars by size and shape is now a science teacher. Okay? All about order and structure in our world and understanding it. Okay? The one that was all about which ones can go faster and what can I do to get them to go faster and what can I do to get them to go farther is an engineer. And the one that was all about moving the cars around the neighborhood and talking to the people that lived in the houses and all that kind of stuff is a DCE that focuses on youth work. Now, you know, it's interesting how that turned out, and you know, we could see those kind of differences in our kids as they were growing up. Not that that was going to dictate what career they went into, you know, what they did with these little cars, but it certainly was a part of who they were and what made them each unique. But it was a part of what made them unique that they didn't at all recognize for a long time. And so it was helpful to us to have an opportunity to talk with them about, you know, you've always seemed to have been interested in this sort of thing. What do you think about getting in a career that has to do with that? You know, this is something that you always did when you were a little kid. Do you still like doing that? What was it about that you always liked when you played with this toy? What is it about you know, this activity that you've always liked, or this sport that you've always liked, or whatever? Those kind of discussions are really helpful to have with our kids, because that's going to force them to kind of start thinking about those interests that they have and those abilities that they have differently, and start making that connection between, oh yeah, that is part of who I am. That is part of something that just seems to kind of be me. All right. Where could that go from here? How could that translate into a career opportunity in a future that could be really exciting and interesting to me, because that's something I've always been excited and interested in, that sort of thing. So think about that as you're thinking about, you know, the career planning and educational planning and that sort of thing of your kid. There's a role for you as parents to have with them to just take some time and talk about that kind of stuff. So as freshmen, we did the Reese motivational profile with these guys, and we provided those copies of that. You know, that's something that, what is it that motivates your kid? What gets them excited about things? If you still got that, pull that out, spend some time talking to them about it. If you don't have it, you want it, see me about it. I've got an electronic version. I can run you another copy. This year, we're going to be doing the pre-ACT with sophomores. And one of the reasons why I do the pre-ACT is it's got a pretty extensive career planning component. So they'll get their test scores back, but they also do an interest inventory as a part of the pre-ACT. And so there'll be a correlation between, okay, this is what you scored well in, and this is what you said you like to do. This is the correlation between those two. Or this is the lack of correlation between those two. Think about that. Okay, so that's one of the reasons why we do the pre-ACT, because that's a really helpful tool. So by the end of this year, when you get that back, that would be something great for you to talk with your kids about in context of all this college plan and career planning and that sort of thing. Next year, by the way, they'll do, as juniors, they'll do the pre-SAT, the PSAT. So that way, before they start doing their college testing, they will have experienced both tests. I've also got some resources online that I'll show you that'll be helpful for you in terms of college and career planning and that kind of thing too. But those are some things that are good to talk about. I've also got a website down here, collegeessayguy.com. It's a really useful site. I encourage you to spend some time on that one. He does a lot of really cool stuff. One of the things he has here is a student values exercise. And he just walks you through a short exercise of how to think about what are some of the things that you really value as a person. He does some cool things with that. A lot of a lot of the stuff that he puts on the site is free. There is stuff that he does that he charges for because this is how he makes his living. But he does provide a lot of really helpful free stuff, and this is some of it. This is also a link that came off of his site too about figuring out my purpose. It's called the Purpose Challenge, and there's an activity that you can go through that just helps you kind of think about and kind of identify, okay, so what kind of purpose do I see myself having in this world? And, as a Christian school, we like to talk about that in terms of, there is a purpose that God has for you. There's a purpose that he has in the gifts that he's given you and the abilities he's given you and the passions he's given you. Let's uncover that and see what that's going to be like so that by the time you leave here, you got an idea about, this is my calling. This is what I'm here on this world for, and so on. So encourage you to take a look at those resources there. We'll talk a little bit about, for you as parents too, about college financial planning. We'll just take a look at a few things about that tonight. Just so you know, again, we talked about the testing sequence, pre-ACT this year, PSAT next year, and then SAT and ACT, we'll get into that. As juniors will have, in fact, juniors next Wednesday night have an evening where all we talk about is the testing. We'll get the PSAT results back. We'll talk about ACT, SAT, which one to take, differences between the two. Talk about some prep opportunities for them and that sort of thing. And then they'll have another college planning on as juniors where they're focusing on just, okay, how do I know what I should be doing on a visit, and how do I know where to apply to, and how do I take the information I have and kind of start whittling things down and so on. And then as seniors, we have a whole night that we do at the beginning of the year just on financial aid. So I'm giving you a little bit of a taste of it now because there might be some things you want to start thinking about now and planning for now, but there'll be a lot more of that to come, just so you kind of understand where that works. The key thing we want to emphasize, though, is the grades and the test scores are a big part of the financial plan as far as college is concerned. I always mention some things like this, and it's good to start thinking about these opportunities. There are some tax advantages that are available to people that have kids that are going to school. So, we're coming into tax season, that sort of thing. I'll throw this out here. If you've got a tax preparer that you work with, start talking to them about what some of the programs and options are relative to tax incentives and tax breaks and that sort of thing relative to college tuition and such. Here's some sites you can go to. You can get a lot of information on all sorts of the things we've been talking about. Studentaid.gov is the key site that you go to for federal student aid. Again, you can start digging into some of that now. You actually won't do anything with it until senior year, but it's good to kind of dig into it and get a little idea about what's available there. This is a helpful site that's got some information that's available relative to comparisons between Lutheran universities and flagship state universities. And it's really not just Lutheran versus state universities, it's really private versus state universities. And so it's helpful as you're starting to think about what sort of options you can go with that decision. It's helpful just to understand a little bit about what some of the inside really deep-seated differences are between those two types of institutions. And one of the things I like to mention to people now, and we'll talk about it more as we go on further too, is, I don't want people caught up in the idea that, I spent so much on education at Rockford Lutheran, there's no way I'm going to be able to afford a private university. It's really not true. And it's primarily not true because of the fact that a lot of those private universities have a lot more endowments and funds available for academic scholarships than a lot of state universities do because of the different kind of support system that state universities have. So some state universities can start out a lot cheaper, but not necessarily end up that way. So there's a lot that we can learn from taking a look at some of these options for financial aid about how the college pricing process really works. And once you dig into it a little bit, people find out that, that process, it's awful lot similar to buying a car. Nobody pays a sticker price. And there's some wheeling and dealing that happens relative to, I got this package from this university and they cost this much. I'd really like to come to your school, but, you sure you don't have anything else you can offer me that would make your price, as good as theirs or better than theirs, that sort of thing? Yeah, it happens. That's part of the process. It really does work that way. So again, you need to put yourself in a position where that school is really interested in having you come to their school. But once you do that, then there's nothing wrong with going back to the financial aid office and saying, we're getting this kind of package over here. You think you could match that? And it'll be yes or no, but there's nothing wrong with looking at the fact that, yeah, there's a certain degree to which, yeah, that's a real negotiable element there in terms of college cost. So other resources here that are available in terms of college search and so on. So just making you aware of those availabilities. One thing I always want to talk with kids about too, and make sure you guys read this part. I talked about it today with you in class. Yeah, this is something that this comes from an organization called SendEDU, which is one of those places where I send transcripts through. It comes on Common App, etc. You don't want me to have to say yes to those questions, because that's not gonna bode well for your future in terms of college acceptance. Okay. Okay, so college process. How do I begin? How do I start making visits? What do I do on a college visit? We've got some resources here available for that. You see there is another tool from the college essay guy here, an application timeline that kind of gives you an idea of how this process works and what that sequence is like. A lot of it's going to start from thinking about, what is it I want to do? What do I want to take? What do I want to major in? Now, the reality is, yeah, that's not a decision that's going to be ever set in stone, because a lot of people, I got an interesting phone call today from somebody who graduated 11 years ago, wants a copy of their transcript. So again, I tell kids that that's a permanent document. It's going to follow you around for a long time, because they want to make a change in career. And so now they need a copy of their high school transcript. And, so they've, after long graduating from here, now they've changed their mind in terms of what they want their career to be. So it's okay to recognize that, yeah, it's likely that that's going to change, but we need to start aiming towards something as a part of the college search process. And you hear a lot of statistics about, kids change their mind in their career like 4 times after they get to college. Well, technically, yeah, that's true. But in many cases, you're talking about, changing from a major in business with a focus in marketing versus a major in business with a focus in advertising or excuse me, something like finance or something like that. So yeah, it's a change technically, but it's not like, the total opposite end of the spectrum of things. So kind of take that statistic that you hear frequently with a grain of salt. Whatever we can do now to start trying to get an idea about what it is we want to major and what we want to focus in is going to be helpful. So that's really a key part of beginning the search. Visits right now are a little bit tough, but a lot of schools are doing a lot of really interesting things with virtual visits. So that's certainly still out there. And you should really be thinking seriously about doing some visits this summer. We can always hope that by that time, things will be a little bit more available and open to visits and that sort of thing. And all sorts of information that's available. I've got some handouts here, and there's some more stuff that's available on our school website about what to do on a college visit. Bottom line is you want to make sure you're talking to people that do the teaching there and the students that are there. Yeah, you're going to be talking to somebody for the admissions office, and that's okay. But be willing to ask them some of the tougher questions that go beyond their canned speech, their canned tour spiel, that sort of thing. Get beyond that. And some of those questions can be, okay, so what is it you don't like about the school? And if they tell you, oh, there's nothing I don't like about the school, it's wonderful. Okay, you got to find somebody else to talk to, because that's just not true. Okay, there's always going to be something you don't like about whatever school you're going to. So, but that's going to be key is finding the right people to talk to, and talk to the people who literally teach the classes. That's going to be something where you end up with a little bit different situation with a private university versus a state university, because most private universities, yeah, you're going to have class sizes and class experiences that are pretty similar to ours, where you've got 15, 20, 25 people in a class, maybe not during COVID, but you get the idea. You're going to have fairly small classes in most private universities versus state universities where you got lectures and that sort of thing, with 100, 150, 200 people in the class. It's going to be tougher to talk to the people that actually teach in that kind of a setting. But maybe that's okay. Okay, there's obviously a lot of people that do very well at large state universities with lecture classes and all that sort of thing. So that's okay if that works for you. But that becomes part of what you want to figure out when you go and make that visit. Does this feel like the kind of learning experience that I think is going to work for me? Is it fine for me to be in classes that are like that because I just want to be a part of a big campus, big community, that sort of thing? Okay, that's great. Nothing wrong with that. Or I really want to be in a situation where I'm going to know my teachers are going to know me, and I can talk to them when I have an issue, when I got questions and that sort of thing. Okay, that's a whole different kind of culture in that university and a whole different kind of environment. So those are the things you want to be seeking out. Those are the things you want to be finding out and digging into when you get to the college visit kind of a process. Okay. Okay, so we've got some things here to take a look at on our Counselor's Corner. We'll just mention here briefly, and then we'll take a look at some things separately here. So this is the site for you to take a look at online, where a lot of these links and resources are already at. You can find them there. We do also have a Facebook page, Rockford Lutheran Guidance Department, and the thing that you can find there is a lot of opportunity for you now as sophomores, and this is, again, one of those things that's starting to kick back up again, for summer experiences on university campuses. So, you know, this is a chance for, especially if you're interested in a fairly selective university, for you to go and be a part of a weekend or a week-long camp of some sort. You know, some of them have engineering camps, some of them have pre-med camps, some of them will have just college experience kind of weekend events, that sort of thing, where you can go there and really get a sense of what life is like on that campus, really get a sense of what life is like in a college setting, period. It's also an opportunity for that school to get to know you better. And if it is a particularly selective university and you want to get a little bit of a foot in the door there, that's a great opportunity for you to do it. Now, to the extent to which that's going to be happening this summer is still a little bit unknown, but I've started to see some things coming out that I didn't see last year at this time, or last spring once COVID hit, that makes it appear as though some more of those things are going to be open up, becoming available for people. And if they're not happening on ground, there's a lot of that that's still being done virtually, virtual college camps like that, taught by, you know, college instructors, getting into exciting, you know, engineering kind of topics, or you know, medical sorts of topics, or architectural kinds of experiences and activities and that sort of thing. So those are some of the things you'll find on Facebook page. There's a lot of stuff on there about scholarships and that sort of thing you'll be more interested in when you get into senior year as well. Okay. Some other things that we use to kind of stay connected with what's going on. Your students have a remind.com account that I use to connect with them when we have like college visitors coming and college reps coming and talk with kids. I'll be sending stuff out with Remind when it comes time for like the pre-ACT and that sort of thing. So that's one of the ways that we stay connected. This is a system that's available on our school Counselor's Corner page that's really an integral part of a lot of what we're talking about today. And I'm going to be spending some time with sophomores on this Illinois Career Information System in the coming couple of months. This is also where you can see that we've got the login and password information for that, so that at some point, if you're working on this at home and you forget what that was, this presentation again will be posted on Counselor's Corner. You'll be able to find it and get into it from there. So let me show you a couple of those things to get a little bit of an idea of what it looks like. I need to change over my screen share here, so give me just a second. Okay, so this is part of the Counselor Corner page that deals with college planning. Okay, and you can see there are a lot of different links in here for tools that you can get into that have to do with what am I interested in, what potential majors might I be wanting to look at, and that sort of thing. And those are just surveys. You can just pull that up and answer some questions, and they'll pop back with an answer that says, yeah, it seems like these are 5 things you'd probably be interested in as a career. Now, you're never going to want to take that and take it as gospel truth. You know, I've got multiple tools on here for the purpose that you can take multiple surveys in that and try them all out and see if you start seeing a pattern of what kind of responses that you get back. But couple that with a great discussion with your folks over, you know, burgers and ice cream at DQ, and you know you've got the groundwork there for, you know, a good hour or 2 conversation about what sort of things you want to be thinking about as you go on into your future. So these can be just great discussion starters. In some cases, you're going to get information back from some of those surveys that say you should major in this, and you're going to say, I don't know where that came from. That is something I just absolutely can't stand. Well, that's good, because now you figured that out, and so now you can go a different direction. But it's a great place to just start kind of seeding some conversations that you can have with your student about that. This is the Illinois Career Information System that I want to show you just briefly. And right here, for example, you've got some multiple assessments that I encourage kids to look into. There's an interest profiler. There's a couple of those actually. There's a career cluster inventory. You know, what kind of career cluster areas am I interested in? There's 2 of those that you can take a look at. There's also some skill analysis opportunities on here. This learning style survey that's here. All of these they're free. The school pays for you to be able to have access to this system. So these are free to you, and you can just dig in there and kind of figure out what some potential interests that you have are, what are some career areas that you might be interested in, and that sort of thing. So some great tools there for you to play with. I'm thinking I might lose my connection here because it's probably, oh, I was afraid it was going to tell me I was logged out, but I'm logged out. Okay, so after you do some work then with figuring out through those assessments what you might be interested in, here's a place where you can dive into figuring out what some potential occupations are that relate to that career area that you're interested in. There's a really deep library of occupations right here. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of occupations listed there, and they've got income information on that occupation. They'll have information about this is how many jobs are going to be available in this occupation next 10 years. This is whether or not that occupation area is going to grow or shrink in the next 10 years, all that sort of thing. So some great tools for that. In many cases, they've actually got videos on there of people doing the occupation or people that have done the occupation are being interviewed. So you can really get some pretty good take on what occupation options look like for you by using this site. That's something else that I'll throw in there though. You know, if you've got an interest in a particular area, there's going to be nothing more helpful to you than talking to somebody that's in that career. If you know somebody, you know, if you got a relative, a neighbor or something that's involved in that career area, that's the best way to find out about it, because if they've spent the last 20, 30 years doing that, they're going to be able to tell you all the ins and outs, and they'll tell you the process that they went through in terms of getting prepared for that career. That can be really helpful too. So, you know, seek out people that you know, neighborhood, relatives, whatever. You know, if you're interested in accounting, take your kid along with you when you go see your tax accountant and have them talk with them for 15 minutes about what it's like to be a tax accountant and what they do. You know, it was interesting one time years ago, this was back when, yeah, believe it or not, I was here when our CAD program was still on paper and pencil. But after that, made that transition into computers and that sort of thing, we had a CAD class, and we took a field trip one time to what was then Sunstrand, and just took the kids through with a parent that worked there and that sort of thing, get an idea about what it was like to be an engineer at a place like that. And as I drove those kids back on the van after they took that tour, there were 2 or 3 of those kids that said, yeah, that's not going to work for me. And this was, you know, they've already invested a year in taking a CAD class here at our school. But it's great that they figured that out then, because they realized that, yeah, sitting with just me in a cubicle with a computer doing that kind of stuff all the time, yeah, that's not going to work. You know, I like talking with people too much. Well, it's not like there's some directions you can go with that with engineering, but yeah, in most cases, engineering is going to be you in a computer screen and designing things and that sort of thing. So finding out that sort of thing firsthand is really huge in terms of understanding occupation and interests and so on. Okay, the next step here is you can see we're just kind of working our way across the menu bar at the top here. The next step here is education. Okay, so if I figured out what I'm interested in, I figured out what occupation I want to look for, now let's take a look at schools that can get me there. And there's some really cool search engines on here, and I'll show you as sophomores how to work them later on this year. But you basically go in and say, okay, so this is where I'd like to go to school geographically. This is what size of school I'd like to go to. I'd like it to be private and not public, or vice versa. I'd like to major in this. I want a school that has these kinds of activities, and so on. There's about 7 or 8 questions like that it goes through, and you just put in answers. And then by the time you get done, literally, you click the button, and it'll list out a list of schools that meet all the criteria that you just put in. and then they've got a link right there. You can link right to those schools and start getting information on those schools. If your list is too short, you go back and change some of your answers so you get a longer list. Or if it's too long, you go back and change some answers and get a little bit shorter list. But it's a really cool tool just for, okay, I don't know what schools to talk to that have an interest or have a program in veterinary science. Okay, this will be a tool that'll show you. It'll tell you which schools have veterinary science in Utah, if for some reason why you want to go to school in Utah, that sort of thing. It's really a good tool. So that'll be something we'll be working on this year. Then it talks about different employment opportunities, that sort of thing. The other thing I want to show you is over here under my CIS portfolio. You'll see one of the list there to the right underneath that cursor there is, does my school offer test preparation materials? And the answer is yes. Okay, there are college entrance testing preparation programs right on here for you, free for you to use, that deal with SAT, ACT, ADAB, some other tests, but there's multiple components to each one of those. There's a program that will allow you to take sample ACT tests. Okay, they're retired tests. It's actual ACT questions. You're just doing it online instead of on paper. Same thing with SAT. Then after you take that, you can also go into another part of the program, and they'll have you take
Mr. Quartz, we're missing your audio all of a sudden. Mr. Quartz, I don't know if you can hear us, but we can't hear you.
Okay, I think our sound should be back now. Hopefully that's back. We didn't lose too much there. Okay, so feel free to be back in touch if you have questions about anything we talked about tonight. Encourages parents and kids. This is a great time for you just to spend some time together talking about who you are as a student and what your interests and abilities and talents are and that sort of thing, just who God made you to be. And then taking a look at, okay, so what sort of things do I need to do in terms of my coursework, in terms of my grades, my tests and that sort of thing, and just who I am in order to get where God's created for me to be. So thanks for being with us tonight, and look forward to continuing to work with you guys in some really exciting times. There's going to be a lot of stuff happening in the next year and a half as you go from where you're at now to starting to send out college applications. It's going to be a fun time, and look forward to being part of that journey with you. So thanks for being here tonight. And thanks to everybody that was online. Feel free to be in touch if you have further questions. Have a good night.